Welcome to Amplify, a podcast series by the Association for Accounting Marketing. I'm Abbey Kanellakis, and I'm a practice growth manager with Rea Associates, a CPA and business consulting firm in Ohio. I'm going to be your host for today's session, and we're going to be talking about where marketers fit into the pricing process. I am really excited to have an AAM Hall of Famer, Aquila, with us on today's program. August is founder of Aquila Global Advisors, where he works closely with firms across the country to help them find solutions to challenges spanning succession planning, mergers and acquisitions, firm efficiency and profitability, and compensation design. He has also been named one of the top 100 people in the accounting profession in 2004, 2007, and every year between 2009 through 2017. Welcome to Amplify, August. We're glad to have you.
Thank you. It's good to be here, Abby. And the top 100 from Accounting Today just came out last week. And once again, I was honored to be named among the group of so many important people in the profession. So it really is an honor. And
you're kind of a big deal.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Well, you know, those of us in the marketing and business development profession, we have a lot of responsibilities. We already wear a lot of hats, but none are more important than our role of helping drive revenue. We know there are a lot of ways to do this. So today you're going to shed some light onto where marketers fit into the pricing process at their firms. And I'm just excited to get started. And real quick, listeners, just a reminder, if you really like this topic or you like this program, please give us a thumbs up or feel free to share this with your personal networks. And also, you're always welcome to leave a comment or provide us feedback anytime. So with that, I'm going to just kind of jump into it, August. Why is pricing a marketing function?
Well, first of all, if all the marketers obviously have taken Marketing 101 sometime in their career, and you look at the original 4 Ps, price, promotion, place, and oh boy, and product. Excuse me, my mind went blank there. Were the basic 4 Ps. Now, unfortunately, most marketing directors really don't get involved in helping the firm price their product, or price their service, you might say. Mm-hmm. And, the key role of marketers is to, first of all, identify what I would call the core clients, or sometimes people would refer it as the target market of the firm. And if the firm really has a marketing orientation, which most firms don't, they have more of a production orientation, sell billable hours, rather than service the market, then the marketing director should get involved and to say, okay, who are our clients? What are they looking for? What values are they looking for? How should we price our services? And then services also go through different life cycles, which we'll talk about a little bit further. So, I always look as that the end buyer, the client, is the one who really determines how much they're willing to pay for a service.
Right.
Based on a lot of different factors. So I think it's really a challenge for marketing directors to make the case that pricing is a marketing function, and that they should be involved in doing it.
Mm-hmm. So you had said, that a lot of times, because of the type of industry that we're in, marketers are not as involved in the pricing structure as we might like to be, or that we probably should be. What are some of the various pricing structures currently out there, and how do they actually apply to accounting firms?
Well, if you go back to sort of looking at, basic marketing concepts, and if you look at different firms, and let's take, for example, not Microsoft, but Apple. Apple is a great example of sort of skimming, a market skimming price. Mm-hmm. Right? And what they do is that they know a few people, or more than a few people in Apple's case, but you know, when they come out with a new product, they're able to charge a lot for that product, so that they're skimming the market, so to speak. They're charging an exorbitant amount sometimes for a phone, much more pricier than other people. And you can make the analysis that if a firm came out with a new service, maybe it's data analytics or something, and in that for larger clients, that's such an important need, is that why would you charge your normal billing rate to provide that service when you could charge a lot more? And most firms, I don't think that way, or they should be thinking that way more often than they are. So that market skimming would be one way. The opposite of that was you want to get into a market, a geographical market, maybe an industry or a niche, and you're going to buy into that market, you know, and that's basically called market penetration, right? You go in there, you offer your service, your product at a lower cost to get into the client and to build a relationship, to build that market. So that's another example of pricing your services differently, maybe for a limited period of time, whether that's 6 months, 8 months, a year, I don't know. And then some firms, if you look in every market, whether it's an accounting firm or a law firm or a consulting firm, some firms have what I would refer to as sort of a prestige pricing. So if you think of an Accenture, if you think of a McKinsey Consulting, they really charge, and they charge a lot for their services, but it's under the, I guess it's under the concept that we are the best. We're going to provide you with the best service, and that's why you're paying more for our people to do it than, you know, the firm down the block. So that's just, you know, 3 different examples that you could look at when you look at, you know, all the different marketing and pricing structures out there. What could a firm actually use at different times, and not necessarily across the board, but for individual industries or niches that they're trying to, you know, promote or develop their position in.
You've worked with a lot of firms. What is some, you know, probably the most popular pricing orientation of some of, you know, the firms that you deal with every day?
Yeah, well, you know, I think traditionally the most popular is just the billable hour. You know, is that I worked 3 hours on your account. My billing rate is $100 an hour, $200 an hour. So I charge you the multiplication of the times of the time that I spent times my billing rate. But unfortunately, that has no relationship to the value that the firm is providing to the client. You know, it's an easy way of doing it, and I think it permits the service provider not to have really a deep relationship with the client. In other words, I don't have to really get to understand you, get to understand your needs, what your wants are, because if I understand that, then when you're asking me to do something, I can sort of determine, or with you, help determine what the value of that service is to you, and then price it accordingly. Now, you know, in firms do this because if you're a staff member and you're making, you know, $100,000 a year, they'll figure that your cost to the firm is that $100,000 divided by an average work year, 2,080 hours, which is approximately, your cost now is $48 an hour to the firm.
Right. And
they'll multiply that, right, by 3, 3.5, 4 times, whatever the multiple is, and that gives you a billing rate. But there's no correlation between that billing rate in the value that you do. You know, if you do a 1040 tax return, or if you're involved in some sort of litigation support or merger activity, isn't the value between those two activities really different? And if you charge the same rate for your merger activity as you would do for a tax preparation, in one instance, in the tax preparation, you're probably overbilling the client. And in the other instance, you're underbilling the client.
Yeah.
And I think if firms would just sort of look at a little bit more of what they're doing and how they're doing it, and try and change the emphasis from, I'm going to evaluate you on your billable hours.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because that's just, I don't know, to me, a focus on billable hours in the firm is the most anti-marketing view activity that you can have. It's you know, billable hours is very much of, if you think of a manufacturing firm, and all they want to do is produce, because
Right.
the more they produce, the more efficient their machines are. But whether anybody's buying what they're producing is a whole nother, you know, a whole nother story. And firms that focus on billable hours, I think there's a lot of, they do a lot of harm to their firm.
Mm-hmm.
They may not be aware of. For example, I recently was working with a firm. A partner was very good at bringing in business, but because the partners were evaluated on their book of business and their production, this partner would do everything, even though he wasn't necessarily qualified to do it. So you got a risk for, you know, liability risk for work not being done properly. The client's not going to be served by somebody who, you know, you want to do an audit and you're not an auditor. That's not good for the firm.
Right.
You know, or for the client. And then, you know, as I mentioned earlier, when you focus on that billable hours, you're focusing on almost the technical aspect rather than the trusted advisor aspect.
Mm-hmm.
You become the trusted advisor not because of your technical skills, but of your ability to, you know, service the client in a way that they trust you, that you're giving them good advice, you know, that they're going to call you when they have a question before they do something, not after the fact.
Well, yeah, you're undermining the relationship aspect of what you're doing, and it has nothing to do with, you know, the audit or the 1040. They're coming to you for much more than that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, and it's not. I don't know. Maybe I never thought it was that difficult for anyone to try and understand problems that their clients are having, because, you know, we're in a service business, and the definition of a service business is you serve others,
Right.
You help others out. That's not you know.
We're breaking it down 101 right now.
Yeah, I know, but, you know, so many people fail to see that. And, you know, you'd ask yourself, well, in order for me to provide you service, I need to talk to you. I need to understand what you're doing and what you want and things like that. So
Absolutely.
101, but you know, sometimes the basic tackling and blocking is the most important thing to do.
Well, and sometimes you forget the basics when you're just in the weeds and you are trying to one up, and you forget to go back to the basics and really help drive it home. Now, you know, I want to kind of change the focus a little bit. Where do we as marketers fit in to the actual product life cycle then?
Okay, well, again, I think, you know, if you look at the product life cycle, there's, you know, the introduction stage, a growth stage, a maturity stage, and a decline. And all products, all services go through that. And then you can add a fifth stage where when you get to the decline, you can sort of extend the life of a product. So you look at bookkeeping, for example. Bookkeeping has been around since, I think, accounting It started, right? Since the
Yeah.
dual entry accounting system was created in the 17th, 18th century. And, what it's evolved is that product has been, the life of that product has been extended. We no longer do it using paper and getting documents. We went through using QuickBooks on a CD or something like that. Now we're at QuickBooks on a cloud.
Right.
And rather than calling it write-up services, we call it client accounting services. But we're extending the life of that product.
Yeah.
Okay. And in the information and the value that we give to clients obviously has evolved over the years. So when you think of, where are your products? If you look at audits, again, audits are in a very mature stage. And you see that through the competitive pricing out there. And, from a marketing director's perspective, when you market that, how do you really differentiate your audits, and how do you price them differently in the market? Maybe a little bit more competitive pricing audits in the market than you would a product or service in the introductory or growth stage.
Right.
If you're in litigation support, if you're in technology or something, excuse me.
No, I think you're right. But it's also what is the value? What makes you different? Why is this audit different from this audit? And how does the marketer help differentiate that for the firm?
Yeah, and I, excuse me, and I think what really differentiates us is maybe if you can, add some real value to an audit, but what really differentiates the services at the end of the day are the people that are providing that service. And it's really critical that, as the auditor, yeah, my audit skills are critical, and that's sort of a given. But how well do I understand the client's business, their industry, especially, when you're working with non-public companies, is that the business and the owner are so integrated,
right,
that one always affects the other. And, clients have, in the research I've done, clients have told me is that there is a value, I don't know if you can put a dollar figure on it, but there is a value to the service provider, to the client, who really understands their business and their personal needs.
Absolutely.
You
Where does value and utility fit in, and how that affects pricing?
Okay, well, I think there's two key aspects in pricing, and that's what you just mentioned: utility and value. So let's give a basic definition of utility. I think utility, a service or a product has utility when it's able to satisfy a need. So utility goes with satisfaction that the client is seeking. All right. So there are different types of utilities. For example, a form utility is a traditional type of utility. And those, how do you translate that into an accounting practice? Well, we'll go back to client accounting services. I want my information electronically. I want to be able to access at any time. I want it on the cloud. Well, if you don't provide that service, that type of service, even though you provide client accounting services, there's no form utility there.
Right.
So this goes back to understanding what the client wants, right?
Yes.
Clients may want it electronically. Some clients may want it, I don't know, some other fashion. Then you have, can you meet the client's deadline? So that's a basic time utility. I need this report by the 3rd week in March so I can give it to my bankers, et cetera, et cetera. Can you deliver on that? Mm-hmm. And then, there's sort of a change utility, is that the service you provide, does it create a change in the client's assets in their mind or something like that.
Mhm.
So I had an estate plan done recently. Now I have peace of mind. So
Right.
that's the change that I was looking at. And I think marketers, and maybe we fall into the same trap as our accounting brethren, as that we're so busy, we're trying to do so many things. It's hard for us to step back and look and say, hey, wait a minute, what's this client really looking for? You know, let's ask those questions to the client when we're out scoping an engagement more than anything else. And then, you know, clients always have an expectation utility. And at the end of the day, what they thought they were going to get and what we deliver,
Mhm.
you know, if that's significantly different, then you have a dissatisfied client. So that,
Yes.
you know, and I think sometimes, you know, these are the discussions or the education, you might say, that marketing directors should be having with their partners to get them
Right.
sort of, you know, on the same level. I mean, this, you know, communications, learning how to communicate is great, but, you know, the website doesn't do that.
Well, and you know, and that's the thing when you're a marketer, sometimes you get pigeonholed in the tasks, the initiatives that happen throughout the day, you know, maintaining the website, creating a flyer, creating an advertisement, you know, it's all of those things. But really, where you're going to get most value from your marketers is letting them actually go out and analyze the market and find out what people are looking for, and then how we can translate that and fulfill their needs.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're absolutely right, Abby. And, you know, and I don't know, you know, I guess it's a two-way conversation. I don't know if the marketing directors or some marketing directors don't have that skill
Mhm.
and they're comfortable. There's nothing wrong doing a website, but if you're
Oh,
hiring a
no.
marketing director, you know, it's a more global position within the firm. It's not somebody who's just doing a website or, you know, writing a electronic brochure nowadays or helping you put out your newsletter. I mean, that's a very small aspect of.
Right. And what do all of those individual things ultimately achieve? And what are our goals, and how are those tasks helping drive our end goal?
Yeah, you know, so I mean, you know, I was going way back in time. I think I was the first marketing director to be made a partner in a major firm
Wow.
in 1985. You know, and that was a big deal back then. It was a big deal for me
It's a
also.
big deal now. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
and it is a big deal now. So we talked about utility. Let's very quickly talk about uh, value.
Yes.
And if utility is a satisfaction that you receive, value is a benefit.
Okay.
Okay, so when you think in any transaction, is that there's always an exchange, right?
Hmm.
You pay for something and you get something, and what you get could be physical or it could be intangible,
Hmm.
but there's some sort of benefit that you arrive from exchanging your dollars for getting something
Correct.
in exchange. Or it could be spiritual if you went, you
Oh,
know,
sure. Sure.
to a religion or a church or synagogue or anything like that. So clients feel, I think, that there's value when you add something to what they already have. So in other words, you know, say a client gets a tax audit notice from the IRS,
Hmm.
and you're able to go through that audit and the client doesn't pay anymore.
Right.
So that's a value to them.
Hmm.
And, you know, and again, you think, okay, that's a higher value than just doing the tax return. How do you price that service? You should be pricing it different. We talked about earlier about clients perceive that there's value when you understand their business and personal relationship. But there's also value when you add something to an existing an existing asset. For example, I was working once with two doctors who wanted a split. So they had this asset, and if they could demerge in a way that wouldn't hurt their existing partnership, that was a valuable way to resolve their problem of of demerging. And then I think last but least, and is very important, is what's the supply and demand? Of, if everybody's offering the service and 40 compliance work, you got a lot of competition, so it goes back to your core clients, et cetera, et cetera. So
yeah, and that's undoubtedly going to have an impact on what you're charging for a particular service. You've talked a little bit about a value curve. Could you explain what that is?
Sure. A value curve is, I call it a value curve. Some people will call it a basic economic curve. So what it is that if you look at services in the marketplace, and there's basically 4 types of services that you, a professional service firm, can provide. Okay, so you got a commodity service, you got a service that's based more on a brand name, you got a service that's based on the experience of the individual service provider, and then you have what I'll call as sort of the rocket science service. Okay? And studies have shown that in any given market, about 60%, which is a big percentage, 60% of all the services in that market are going to fall in the commodity range, which means that you have a lot of competition, a lot of price sensitivity, and what you need to be successful in that market is to be high volume, low cost producer.
Right.
So, you need to be the H&R Block, you need to be the Toyota, so to speak. I mean, so again, from a marketing perspective, you can't be organized the same way in the commodity market as you are in the other end of the market. So you've got pretty high leverage. And then when you think of the brand name, so I always think of the big 4 firms. If a major public company is going to do an audit, they're going to take probably one of the big 4 firms, maybe Grant Thornton, BDO, something. But for the most part, they want somebody with that name. Now, that doesn't mean that a smaller firm cannot be branded in their area. There are certain firms that specialize in casino work, or specialize in in Colorado, and in marijuana accounting and things like that. So they've created that brand name. But when you think about it, how do you create that brand name? And then there's about 20% of the market in that. So there's a good percentage of the market if firms really focus in on an individual area or two. And then the third market segment would be what I call where you have extensive experience. That's about 16% of the market. So clients are going to look for someone who has done this before.
Yeah.
Okay, so from a marketing perspective, you want to get me out there. You want to make sure that clients know that I'm the go-to person, so to speak, in this area. I've written articles. I speak at conferences. Lawyers, your referral sources know that you're the person.
You're the guy. You're the guy.
You're the guy, and you can support. I mean, you can charge more for that, okay? Because there's fewer people competing with you, and usually you can charge high fees, and you have some leverage, but it's not your 12 to 1 or 1 to 12, like you do at a lower level.
Yeah.
You got a lot fewer people because they're looking for you to be the face to do more of the work. And then the last group, this rocket science group, unique services, it's only 4% of the market. And to me, that's a problem that many times the client has never faced, maybe you've never faced before. So it's trying to understand, and resolve something. To me, it's the open heart surgery type
Yeah.
of life. And there's really very little leverage, if any, on that, but you can sure charge a premium fee.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And sometimes too, it might even be, as simple as sudden death of a business owner, and
Right.
what's a firm, and you go in there, you don't want to sort of overcharge the client, but you sure don't want to undercharge them for something like that. So
yeah, at that point you're a superhero. So
so when you look at it, that's the value curve going up from the commodity up to and as you go up the value curve, you should definitely charge more, because the value of what you're doing is really there.
That's really great. I like how you explained it. I got a lot out of that, and I know our listeners will too. Now, you've provided some really great insight throughout these, this last half hour or whatever, but how do we actually go about implementing these changes in our firm's pricing philosophy?
Slowly.
Yeah, you don't want to scare your partners away, but this is really an important facts, an important way of thinking.
I remember several years ago, I was going wherever my barber shop was. It was more than a barber shop, but I got a letter that the person who was cutting my hair got promoted. Mm-hmm. And I got an article saying, oh, so-and-so is now a senior stylist or something like that. And her new rate is, they were not bashful about, raising fees. But here's what I think. It's always easier to start a pricing change with new clients rather than with existing clients. Mm-hmm. I think when you go through the process, you've got to understand and think through what's going to be changed, how you're going to make those changes, what's going to be the obstacles that your partners are going to throw up, how do you overcome those obstacles. So it might take a year of thinking, depending on where you're at. And you might take a certain industry and start saying, okay, let's price our services there. Let's not worry about billable hours, but let's worry about the cash that we actually bring in at the end of the year. Because, if I can get $10,000 for 3 hours worth of work, do you care that I've only billed 3 hours and then right. Or the fact that I brought in $10,000? So, what firms have done, some firms have gone into using a menu approach, especially for taxes. Mm-hmm. So, if you got and this is very common in a lot of small and mid-sized firms, is that every schedule that you have on a tax return, you add more. That's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is that, educating, showing your partners what they collected under the existing system and what they might have been able to collect under a new system, because money always talks. Mm-hmm. So if you can show them the difference. And one of the things that I think is really important is that more and more firms, rather than saying, here, we'll do your write-up work or we'll do this, they're giving clients options of levels of services, right? It's like American Express card has a green card, right? They have a gold card, they have a platinum card, they have a black card, and it's the same card. It does the same thing. Sure, there's a few more benefits.
Sure.
But you go from $55 to $1,000 a year to pay for the card.
Yeah.
And what they're doing is they're offering different levels of what somebody can do. So, if you look at client write-up services, your very low service could just be the base. You're just doing it and you're putting it into a format and nothing else. And then the next level up, you might add some consultation, but the price goes up significantly for that consultation.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, and when you change from a billable time to almost a fixed fee in many cases, then it's, you know, it's the responsibility of the service provider to manage that engagement more effectively. Because right now, every time somebody touches a tax return and moves a paper from here to here, they put an hour down. But what's the value? Do they add any value to the end product?
Yes.
So, you know, I think it is a difficult thing to do. It's a whole change in the mentality, I think, of the firm, going from billable hours to really more client service, client satisfaction, figuring out what the client really wants, you know, and all those things ultimately tie into marketing in the sense.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, I think, you know, one of the biggest things that listeners and viewers can take from this episode of Amplify would be, you know, you have the common mantra, think outside the box. Well, for this, it's, you know, start adopting the mantra, think outside the billable hour, and think how you can communicate that to the partners. You know, there's a strategy in that. It's an art form to that, but if you have to shift your thinking beyond the billable hour in order to be successful.
Right.
Well, that's all the time we have today. And I want to thank you so much for joining us. You really, you know, helped really solidify where we stand as marketers in the pricing structure and how to bring that to market and how to help sell that to our partner group. So I really do want to say thanks, August.
Okay, well, thank you, Abby. It's been enjoyable.
All right, this wraps up another episode of Amplify. If you like this episode, leave us a comment or share it with your network on social media. And if you really like the great content that we are able to provide you through this program, we would like to encourage you to sign up so you are able to get access to this, get a reminder every month. It's a really valuable way to help add value to what we do as an organization. I'm Abbey Kanellakis, and I'm encouraging you to keep aiming high.
Power up, listening, we're always aiming.